Welcome back, everybody. Marv here. If you're new to my channel, I'm a personal trainer out of New York City for the last 14 years. I personally have lost 100 pounds myself, and now I work with clients, trainers, and those who want to inspire others to change their lives. I come to you from first-hand life experience. If you like what you see, like and subscribe for more videos like today. Let's get started. I wanted to talk today about tempo. Most of the exercises that we do in the gym or wherever it is that you tend to work out tend to be resistance-based exercises that work in a traditional fixed range of motion, controlling the weight from endpoint to endpoint. Barring explosive exercises or dynamic exercises like kettlebell swings or other movement patterns that require speed and momentum, for the majority of them, they're working with specific resistance that's meant to be done at a certain speed. In this industry, we've already figured out that there's an ideal tempo, 4-2-1, and I'll get into that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about why it's important. When we work with tempo, we control where the resistance is in the motion. So in a movement pattern like a curl, right? It's just taking a weight from a fully extended elbow and fully flexed bicep, right? Top, bottom of the movement. Let's just work simply there. When you look at everything that's involved in the movement pattern, and you think about the muscle or the primary muscle that's involved, just to keep it real simple. Let's look at that muscle like a rubber band. And you have how that rubber band attaches to the bone itself, right? Now you're looking at these two joints, right, that are complex. They have tendons, they have ligaments, but just imagine that it's another attachment piece that's not the muscle itself. Muscle is special because it has blood running through it. Tendons and ligaments do not, right? They're made of a slightly different material, and therefore they don't grow the same nor change in the same manner. Some thicken, some become more elastic, some become more durable, but muscle tissue is what grows and shrinks and has a completely different life pattern. Bone is bone, what they all attach to. When you look at a movement pattern and you move through that movement pattern at the right tempo, then the weight that I'm using and the force that movement is creating or producing is going primarily to the muscle itself. Depending on where you are in the movement and the angle, you may control where in the muscle or what aspect or what range of within the muscle that it's working, whether it's higher or lower or closer to the outside or inside. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that when you go through that movement pattern, you keep the tension in the muscle itself. Now, the associative aspect of how these other elements come into play, the bone that it's attached to, the ligaments and the tendons, those have their own changes in growth and or improvement that have to happen over time. But the first impact is at the muscle. Now, what winds up happening is, if I move with the muscle, if I move through the movement pattern at tempo, most of the force is on the muscle tissue. And some of it is on the ligaments and the tendons and the joints, but not the primary force. The primary force is on the muscle itself. Our problem is when we move quickly through a movement pattern, we create a problem here. We now shift the force from being at the muscle itself to the tendons and the ligaments. I am now moving much faster than that muscle can respond to the movement pattern. So the body then shifts the force and it carries it more towards the joint itself. Now, whether you're at this end point or whether coming up quickly, now because the tension is transferred to the tendons, the ligaments, and the joints, they're doing more of the work. And by doing more of the work, they're going to suffer first before the muscle tissue does. Now, sometimes the reason you go fast is because the weight is inappropriate. Other times you go fast because you've ascended in weight too fast, or because you're in a hurry, or you're in a class and you're trying to keep up with the speed of the class, or you're following along with some program or some person you're following online or whatever it is that you're following, and the tempo is too quick. Then what tends to happen is when the weight is light and when you're starting out, you tend to go slow or you tend to go at a pace. And that pace, excuse me, that pace, coupled with the fact that it's a new exercise, tends to either show you results or have an effect like soreness or whatever it is that you use as your measurement to note that things are working, things are changing. But then what quickly happens is something changes. You either start going too fast or you ascend to a weight that you can no longer do it at tempo. And by not doing it at tempo, now what you start to notice is you start to have less or no results. You start to have pain in your joints, specifically either in this particular case, since we're talking about the bicep curl, you start to have pain in either the shoulder or the elbow joint. Right? You start to have issues in the bicep tendon attachment here at the elbow or at the shoulder. In one sense or another, it is because you are going too fast, almost always. Then you couple it with the idea that you think it's smart to go quickly, so you go fast through the bottom end point. So at the point in which the muscle is at its most stretched, when those tendons and ligaments are in their most vulnerable position, you think it's a good idea to go quickly. And what winds up happening is you put even more damage and stress at the point in which it's at its worst. Now, if you go slow, aka you go at tempo, which we will cover, yes, it's difficult. Yes, it hurts more. Yes, it takes longer. There is less glory because you can't do as much. So you have to put your ego aside. Ego lifters, people who are trying to look cool, people who are trying to do more than they can handle are always going to go too fast. People who are distracted, people who are looking around, people who are trying to keep up with the Joneses and somebody else who's doing a heavier weight. Also, hurting yourself, creating problems, all because you didn't do it appropriately. Now, good training has you working within parameters, certain variables, stand a certain way, be in a certain posture, breathe a certain way. Tempo is probably the most important of all of those when you're talking about muscular development. Because I've seen people not stand right, not necessarily breathe correctly, not necessarily have the ideal form, but because they worked at tempo, they saw results. They saw strength gain. They saw muscular development. They saw improvement. So I guess today's main focus is trying to get you to now work at tempo, dealing with the discomfort of working at the appropriate tempo, and then therefore benefiting from the results of working at tempo. Okay? So now, let's talk about tempo. 4, 2, 1. That's today's takeaway. Okay? 4 being the eccentric part of the movement pattern. For some people, it's a little difficult to understand the difference between eccentric and concentric, and I don't want to take today's conversation to outline that too greatly. But in the bicep curl, it is the lowering portion. It is where you are lengthening the bicep. Okay? The concentric portion is the closing of that angle. It is the force production in the movement pattern. So an ideal tempo for a bicep curl, regardless of what curl it is, regardless of which type, whether it's a bar, whether it's a cable, doesn't matter, is always going to be, if we're starting from the closed position, it is a 4-second eccentric. You can count in your head. You can count a little slow, a little fast, but it's basically 4 seconds. So I will count down. So it's 4, 3, 2, 1, and you get to your final extended position. We'll talk wrist position. We'll talk about what fully lengthened is and what too lengthened is, or what released at the elbow joint or taking the muscle out of tension is on a different video call. What I want to do now is just cover that at that fully extended position is where we pause. That's the 1 in the 4, 2, 1. Why the pause? Because momentum is a force that is, in most cases, stealing you of your workout and your results. Because by adding momentum where it doesn't belong, the only thing you get to is to the end result, which is no development sooner. You get to finish your workout a little faster. You get to get on to the next thing a little sooner, but you also get less results. So by lowering to set end position point, pausing for a second, then you initiate from a dead stop. By initiating from a dead stop now, at the point in which your muscle is at its most lengthened, when it's the hardest, you have to start from zero, not from a bouncing bottom, not from a momentuming bottom, which in most cases is just taking advantage of the fascia and the joint and the elasticity and the end position, that way you can bounce up and it seems like you're doing something cool. Why? Because you're probably too focused on speed or the squeeze at the top. News flash. The squeeze isn't where development occurs. It's where you get to have fun and tell yourself that you did something. But the reality is that a squeeze without the appropriate stretch and the appropriate tempo doesn't result in what you want. And as long as we keep using metrics like, oh, I feel the burn, oh, I can feel it working, oh, I squeezed really hard, that doesn't mean anything. You're missing certain pieces here, and therefore you're missing on results. Some of you are going to be too hard-headed to want to even try it. Why? Because you already know it's going to be hard. Because you expect that if you've been in the gym for 6 months, you're supposed to hurt less than the guy who just started. Newsflash, it's supposed to hurt you more because you're supposed to be doing it better than he does. You're supposed to be going at the same slow tempo with a heavier weight, suffering more, therefore earning your results. You don't get to be in the gym more, have more experience, and then do it even in poorer form. That's not how this works. You're supposed to do it at a higher level. It's not supposed to be easier. You're just supposed to be doing more difficult way and therefore getting better results. So in our 4-2-1, we have that 4-second eccentric. We have that pause at the bottom. And then we have that concentric finish, which should take about half as long as it took to lengthen, right? So if it's 4, 3, 2, 1, pause, 1, 2. Now that 2 sometimes can become a 3 when it's difficult. It could become a 4. You come up at that speed or more, depending on how difficult it is. If it's heavy and it's towards the end of the set, you're not coming up as fast as you did early on. But at the same time, I don't want you to come up in a 1. I don't want you to use momentum. I don't want you to jerk the weight. I want it to be clean. I want rep 1 and the last rep to look fairly the same, minus the difficulty level that it takes you to finish the movement. But I want the eccentric to be the same. I want the pause to be the same. The caveat would be when you're moving a heavy weight and you need to get it off of you because there's danger involved, because you could get hurt. Yeah, that last rep, yeah, take precaution. Don't finish the whole rep. Maybe go a little faster to get it racked up. That's fine. But in exercises where there's no injury in potentiality, right? I want you to go to tempo, and I want you to tell me you don't see the result difference. Because what happens is you start off with 10 pounds and you immediately start ascending in weight because you're not adhering to tempo. If you would have adhered to tempo, 1, you don't go up in weight so fast, and 2, you start to see the development and the strength increase. Here's the other benefit, that when you're moving the tempo, as the muscle grows appropriately, so does the strength and the elasticity, in some cases, of the tendons and the ligaments. So does the bone harden and strengthen, because it now all grows in reference to how the muscle is growing. But if you start to ascend the weight too fast, thinking that muscle's the only part here that's actually growing, what tends to happen is now those joints, ligaments, and those tendons and the bone itself don't grow at the same speed. So now they're lagging behind. So now you start to have injury problems like fractures, like tears, like all different types of tendinitis, fasciitis, all of these different issues that are created because you're operating in an abusive state to those elements. Where had you done the proper progression over time with tempo, you wouldn't have ascended to that weight, and more than likely with good form, you wouldn't have done damage to the joint and or the musculature and or the bone structure. And this I see all the time in the gym. I can't tell you, had not been one day in 14 years I haven't seen somebody go too fast on many exercises. And then what happens is you have a combination of reasons why this happens. And I'm not here to bash anybody, but there is some truth to be said that when many people take on certain habits cross over. One of those problems is if you take a group fitness class, and group fitness class is not just pure cardio, but the group fitness class is kind of designed with weights as well. What will happen is that the tempo that the class is operating at is an aerobic tempo. So they have you pick weights, but they want you to move at an aerobic speed, not at a muscular growth speed, not at a proper tempo for training, but to keep up with the class and to keep up with the music. So that's one way we get screwed up. Now we leave group fit, we go onto the main floor, we go grab our weights, we get in our little mirror, and now all of a sudden we're moving fast like we did in class. That's one screw up. And the next one is you take on different types of training that focus on speed, that circuit training, and going from this to this to this. Well, because speed is a factor, because I'm trying to keep your heart rate up, because I'm trying to kick your ass at the same time. So now all of a sudden I'm going fast from here, and fast from here. And even if one exercise was performed to tempo because it's difficult and maybe you focus on it, the next one is done fast. And then the next one's done fast. Why? I'm trying to kick your ass. Oh, just work really hard. Oh, just push really hard. And we use those excuses to do things wrong. Then we get to a certain point where we don't see results, and then we want to say that exercise doesn't work. Oh, this doesn't work. Oh, that exercise gives me pain here. No, you gave you pain there because you did it wrong. So the main takeaway today is slow the hell down. Period. I haven't seen anybody go too slow. I see people go too fast. So apply 4-2-1 as the tempo to every single exercise that is not a ballistic or a speed-based exercise, right? Your curls, your push-ups, your squats, every single thing you want. Every single form of resistance training, pull-ups, lunges, step-ups, every form of exercise. And what you will see is strength improve, acuity to that exercise, general muscular development, and you will see a reduction in pain. You will see a reduction in soreness at the joint level. And you're much more easily able to kind of figure out what the appropriate weight is, how much work the muscle and or that movement pattern can take before you're going too far. And what happens is that fatigue matched with how hard you're working tends to keep you behaved within that movement pattern. And you see results. But if your goal is to do a lot today, if your goal is to keep up with somebody else who's moving fast, if your goal is, I got to get out of here, I got to do this real quick and I got to go. Listen, I'm telling you right now, you're just sacrificing your results. You're spinning your wheels. You're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to be happy with the final result. Okay, I haven't seen one person that couldn't improve at all from just improving tempo. And I'm talking about from newbies in the gym to experienced trainers, experienced trainers 100% also, but experienced exercises, individuals who have been training for a long time, individuals who used to train for a while and are coming back to it. Everybody can benefit from it, right? And before you knock it, try it. Anyway, this is Marv. See you on the next one. Peace.